Mr. Ward, Brookfield owns substantial investments in Canada and is the largest owner of commercial properties in major cities across Canada, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that Brookfield has reaped very large profits from its investments in Canada?
That would be correct, although
okay, and while Brookfield has reaped large profits in Canada, it has paid relatively little in the way of Canadian taxes, correct?
Correct.
And help me understand how Brookfield avoids paying taxes in Canada. As I understand it, Brookfield sets up a complex web of foreign subsidiaries in which investment funds ultimately end up in Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, and other tax havens, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's precisely what Mark Carney did when he was the chair of Brookfield, when he set up the $10 billion or $15 billion Global Transition Fund. He registered it in Bermuda. The $10 billion second Global Transition Fund, he registered it in Bermuda. And the $5 billion Catalytic Transition Fund, where he registered it in the Cayman Islands. Do I have that right?
Hang on, Mr. Cooper. Point of order, Ms. Church, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if we can ask yourself as the chair to please illuminate how this line of questioning is relevant to the study of this committee, which pertains to a review of the Conflict of Interest Act, and not about either the tax dealings of any particular individual or of tax law, frankly, generally.
Okay, so I've been chairing this committee for almost 3 years now. I generally give a lot of latitude, as we do in the House, for members of the committee to use their time. And I do expect Mr. Cooper, as a seasoned member of this committee, that he will come back and bring this back to where it needs to go. And I would give as much latitude to you, Ms. Church, as I'm giving to Mr. Mr. Cooper right now. On the same point of order, Mr. Barrett, I've stopped the time too, by the way. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. I don't want to engage in debate on this.
No, but it was about whether this pertains to the motion. I'm not sure, Chair, if perhaps you could read the motion or have Ms. Church read the motion back into the record. Tax havens is specifically spelled out. Carried interest payments, this is very relevant to the application of the Conflict of Interest Act. And so it's the line of questioning it's very clear to see where it's leading, but it also speaks directly to the motion. So I appreciate your ruling with respect to latitude, but I don't think respectfully that any latitude is required. Mr. Cooper is engaged in a line of questioning that goes to the heart of the matter that we're studying, and that's why we have this expert.
I appreciate that intervention, Mr. Barrett. I'm not going to reread the motion. I think all the members are clear of where this is going. We are studying the Conflict of Interest Act as it relates to designated public office holders, and perhaps the recommendations will come in the response. Recommendations of the committee and the report will come from some of the responses that Mr. Ward gives to Mr. Cooper's questions. Mr. Cooper, you have 3 minutes and 49 seconds to continue your questioning. Go ahead.
So to the witness, did I get that right with respect to Mark Carney setting up 3 major multi-billion-dollar clean energy funds from Brookfield in tax havens, including Bermuda and the Cayman Islands?
I can't speak to the specifics of those particular funds, but it would seem par for the course.
Okay, thank you very much. On page 12 of your report, there is reference to Brookfield's tax gap over the last 5 years between 2017 and 2021. Just so that I'm clear on what a tax gap means, it is measuring the difference between taxes actually paid and taxes that would have been paid if the statutory Canadian tax rate had been applied to profits reaped. Do I have that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And according to your analysis, or the analysis cited in your report, Brookfield's tax gap in just 5 years between 2017 to 2021 was over $6.5 billion. Is that right?
That's correct, and that was based on research done by the Canadians for Tax Fairness and by some analysis from the Toronto Star as well.
So it would be fair to say that the extent of Brookfield's tax avoidance, taxes that it should have otherwise paid in Canada in just 5 years, was over $6.5 billion.
Yes, I mean, the tax gap is looking at the statutory rate, and there are some reasons why legitimate reasons why companies pay below that, but that's an indication of a major underpayment of taxes that, in the spirit of the law, should have been paid in Canada to finance public services in Canada.
Yeah, I'd say $6.5 billion is a lot of money. Would it be fair to say that Brookfield is Canada's largest tax dodger amongst corporations?
It has been labeled as such, and if it's not the largest, it's clearly in the very top tier.
Well, your report cites 123 of Canada's largest corporations, and it found that the largest tax gap for 2017 to 21 was none other than Brookfield, right?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You still have a minute, Mr. Cooper. If you are,
Okay, well, I would just ask the witness if he can just elaborate on why it is in his submissions that a blind trust is not an appropriate mechanism.
in 45 seconds, sir.
Well, I think because there's still the ability to profit from something in a blind trust, even if you don't know the details of what's going on, you're benefiting from the actions that might be taken by somebody else on your behalf.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper and Mr. Ward. Next, we're going to go to
You have
Ms.
5
Church.
minutes. Thank you, Chair. We need to review the conflict of interest legislation. And my opinion is very different from Ms. Church. We know that her leader, and we're talking about tax avoidance with her leader and tax havens, but indirectly, we're looking into the legislation, and we want to know whether or not the Conflict of Interest Act is sufficient to ensure that Canadians can trust its institutions. That's the main goal. And the legislation itself, and this is supported by the Ethics Commissioner, is that we shouldn't be too coercive in reviewing the legislation in order to attract people from the private sector to become public office holders because we need their knowledge. That's what the Ethics Commissioner said. I think that a Prime Minister needs to lead by example and requires the highest level of transparency. Do you agree with that statement?
I firmly agree with that statement, that there's a moral obligation to set a very high standard.
Or, on a présentement quelqu'un qui était
So
dirigeant.
now we have somebody who used to be at the head of a company that is not transparent. Do you agree with that statement as well?
I agree with that statement.
OK. Donc, il faudrait faire.
So we'd have to trust this person who formerly led a company that is not at all transparent, that has been abusing the system and doing a lot of tax avoidance, and now we're supposed to believe that we should be reassured by the Prime Minister putting his assets in a blind trust and that the legislation is sufficient for people to trust their democratic institutions. With your expertise and with your knowledge, do you believe that that's enough, as stated Ms. Church?
I think that there's a serious credibility problem, and I've heard comments from Prime Minister Carney in response to allegations of tax avoidance that really have not gotten to the core of the moral issues involved, in that there is an obligation to contribute to funding like ordinary Canadians in order to have the public services that everybody wants and desires, and in fact that businesses need in order to thrive in Canada. The public funding of infrastructure is absolutely essential for businesses big and small across Canada. And I think it's a problem when the Prime Minister has led a company that is seriously engaged in aggressive tax avoidance in Canada and on its investments around the world.
Je reviens sur ma question tout à l'heure parce que c'est ce qui...
I'm going to come back to my question that I asked earlier because it's something that's been on my mind. This is not a minister that we're talking about. Even if one can recuse oneself, we're not talking about a minister or a member of parliament. This is the Prime Minister. That he makes decisions that have an impact on the economy. And there's a bill now for rebuilding Canada, rebuilding the Canadian economy, and these are all fields in which Brookfield has interests. And so does it not seem that we should perhaps be concerned and perhaps seek to better frame all of this? We don't want people to believe that there might be a conflict of interest.
Absolutely. And I think that the example that I began to speak about in Australia of Brookfield and the Caisse de dépôt Quebec, CDPQ, investing in a private healthcare, private hospital company in Australia is a lesson for Canadians that be careful in terms of private investment in infrastructure and public services, because it often leads to a situation where there's profit extraction that harms tax payments that should be made, and also generally is not contributing to a better service, a better society, and the public services that people need. So I'm all in favor of robust and strong investments by funds in Canada to improve infrastructure, to improve services, but I think that has to be done carefully and with care and with a great amount of transparency and accountability and public oversight to ensure that benefits are widely received and not lining the pockets of particular investors, Brookfield included.
Okay. Merci. C'est plus que 5 minutes.
That was a bit more than 5 minutes. Mr. Hardy, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ward, for being with us today. I am a young MP here, and I only started recently. I've noticed that our legislation has been built to be used by those in power. Often, people say that they have the right to do something. Do you agree with that statement?
So I believe that lots of the legislation has been written by corporate interests and is abused by corporate interests for their own personal, private gain.
Et ça, ben, si je vous écoute, effectivement.
And I think that Canadians are starting to lose trust in our institutions, and this kind of behavior only reinforces that lack of trust, because they're hearing politicians or leaders say that they have the right to do something, it's legal. So do you agree with that?
I completely agree. I think that there's an undermining in the faith of public institutions when wealthy individuals and large corporates kind of play by their own set of rules that they in fact written, whereas ordinary citizens are held to a very different standard and don't have the legal quote unquote rights to hire an accounting firm, to set up a Swiss bank account and do other things that are available to wealthy individuals and the largest multinationals in the world.
On revient à Brookfield présentement.
We're talking about Brookfield right now, and we saw that you stated that Brookfield is one of the biggest companies in Canada with a tax rate under 5% for over 15 years. So that's billions of dollars in revenue that was not sent, in taxes that wasn't sent to Canada. So does that mean that Canada's system is too lax?
I do think that the Canada system needs to be tightened, and companies like Brookfield shouldn't be able to get away with whether it's legal or not. There should not be available to have such low tax payments in Canada for such a sustained period of time. I think that's a clear indication that there's a problem in Canada's tax system as well as in the global tax system that need to be addressed and fixed. And I think transparency is the first step, and transparency can then drive both public opinion and political reform.
Donc, vous allez voir où est-ce que je m'en vais avec ça. Donc, on a
So
une
you might be seeing where I'm getting at. So there's somebody who was at the head of a Canadian company that was doing everything that he could to avoid paying taxes in Canada that would benefit Canadians, and that person has become prime minister of a country. Do you believe that, given the role of the prime minister, they should be doing everything that they can to ensure that multinationals and big companies that make billions of dollars should give back to Canadians? Do you believe that the Prime Minister of Canada should do this? Or do you believe that he won't move forward on the process towards transparency?
Well, I think there's a golden opportunity for Prime Minister Mark Carney to change colors and really show that he can take leadership and he can move legislation to increase transparency for multinational corporations and make the largest, wealthiest companies in the world pay their fair share of tax in Canada and around the world. There is an ability to change ways and to show leadership. And I think that would go a long way to restoring faith in the Prime Minister and in the system in Canada.
Dans le fond, ce que je comprends, là, c'est que, comme vous dites, il y a un rôle de...
So there's a leadership role here, and Canada could be in a position where someone with a lot of knowledge in economy and from the private sector could send out a clear message for countries throughout the world and say, listen, businesses who are making money in this country should participate in the economy of that country. Do you believe that that should be part of the role as Prime Minister?
Absolutely. And I'll add to that I think that Canada's backing down on the digital service tax in the face of threats from the Trump administration was a grave mistake. You cannot negotiate with a bully. And so I think I would strongly encourage Canada and other countries to move forward with the digital service tax in the absence of any possibility of moving forward at the OECD in terms of reforms that were moving there. And I think it was a grave mistake for the G7 meeting in Canada to allow U.S. companies to avoid the global minimum tax as well. This is undermining the progress that has been made through multilateral negotiations over many, many years. And Prime Minister Carney was the host of the G7 meeting that permitted U.S. multinationals, the most aggressive tax dodging companies in the world, some of the largest companies, to continue to be outside of a global minimum tax system. So I think that there's huge opportunity to shows leadership, and that Canada can play a leading role in driving both domestic and international reforms to create a fairer system where we have adequate funding for public services and infrastructure that everybody wants and needs.
Okay,